Okay, well, welcome back from our intermission, and let's move ahead. So many people in the World Federalist Movement today are unaware of the vibrant youth movement that existed within the World Federalist Movement in the 1940s and 1950s. In 1947, for example, there were over 100 student Federalist chapters on campuses around the country, including Yale, Stanford, and UCLA. Those activities are documented in the book One Shining Moment, which I'm holding up here, and we'll in a moment put a link in the chat box so you can locate the book if you'd like. Um, Many of those student Federalists of that time went on to become leaders in politics, academia, international relations, and public affairs. Unfortunately, in the years that followed, those numbers diminished along with the movement itself. And for decades, World Federalists struggled to find ways to connect with those of the younger generations, but often with little success. But as Bob Dylan sang, the times they are a changing. And not only are young people joining the movement, but many are also, as you have just seen, taking leadership positions, which brings us to today's panel. Daniel Blewett is from Australia and co-founded the Young World Federalists. Through the use of video and online community building, they are doing pioneering work to engage young people worldwide. Amelia Ismail is from Argentina and is with Democracia Global. Democracia Global was founded by Fernando Iglesias, a leader in the World Federalist Movement, two-time Argentine parliament member, and Democracia Global has had a number of campaigns, including one for the creation of a Latin American and Caribbean criminal court against transnational organized crime. And that's focused on combating crimes such as drug trafficking, human trafficking, and money laundering, and also to help move the entire region a step closer to forming a regional federation. I will put both of those organizations, or links, I should say, to both of those organizations' websites in the chat box in a few moments. And last but not least is Semawit Hagos, originally from Ethiopia and now living in the United States. Semi is one of the newest members of the board of Citizens for Global Solutions, and she came to us through one of the World Citizens Clubs that we mentioned yesterday. So first, each panelist will briefly address the same question, which is, what do you think it will take to build a powerful youth movement as part of a worldwide World Federalist movement? And I'll have each up to about 5 minutes to respond to that question. Next, the panel will have up to about 15 minutes for open discussion among themselves. So they'll be commenting on each other's ideas, expanding on their own, asking each other questions, and the like. And finally, we'll open the session for questions and comments from the audience. So we'll start with our friend from down under, Daniel. Why don't you start us off? And I first, oh, there he is. Okay, Daniel, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Obviously, I'm probably the one person who's out of whack in time zones, but I know a lot of people are pretty late. So the idea behind the YWF was basically to be a kind of modernized online web presence for the entire World Federalist movement, because obviously got a lot of pedigree, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of smart people, but the one problem that's always sort of existed is a lack of online presence, and obviously that's where you're going to get somewhere with young people. So the first thing I wanted to sort of note was the three sort of categories that you can put people into, which is the people that already believe in the idea that don't know what it's called, basically. They don't know what it's called. They have never heard of world federalism. They've been involved with it. These people are great because there's like hundreds of thousands of them, I think. And we get them every single day. Like there's a few people who join us every single day. From this group. Basically, I didn't know anything existed. This is amazing. I'm really excited to find something. You then kind of leverage that group to find the second group being they don't know anything about it. They're not for it or against it. They've just never heard of it, which is probably, you know, the vast majority of the human race. These are the people you're sort of marketing to, and you market to them in a way that you use the first group to do it. You know, scale speaks for itself. You know, if it seems like a big group hidden out there, people want to know about it and they want to get involved. And then the third thing is, the third group is just people who are just automatically averse to the idea because, I don't know, they believe NWO conspiracies or they're crazy or misinformed or something, like whatever it is. That group is untenable. We'll just leave them alone for now. So the second point with these groups effectively is that you need a common experience. So you can't have someone who's out in, I don't know, Adelaide in Australia, for instance, wants to join the WCAA, which is our group here. They have a completely different experience to what you guys do in America if you're trying to join CGS, for instance. What they need is a common global community. Everyone jumps on, everyone gets involved, everyone sees the same things, sees the same people. It's commonality, which is kind of what this whole thing is about. It's about commonality and a common movement. So we're trying to drive that through the YWF, but we want to do it through more people because you need that common web experience for people to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And this sort of just brings me to the third point, which is the final one, which is scale, which is basically that the big objection that most people have is that, you know, I don't think anyone else is going to go for this. So therefore I can't go for it because I think it's a waste of time. So the thing is, what you need to do is project to them that there are lots of other people going for it. And then that argument sort of falls over really quickly, which is where the I won't bother because I don't think anyone else is for it very quickly turns into FOMO. So I don't know if you guys have heard of FOMO, but it's fear of missing out. And it's basically something big is happening without me that I care about. I should really quickly get involved. So it's all about projecting scale through common marketing and having a similar brand. So these are the kind of things that work for other online movements. And I think it would work really well in terms of getting young people on board because it's working for us. We have 5,000 people on our Reddit page. We've only existed for a year. And we've almost hit 500 people in our Discord community. So yeah, it's just constantly growing. So obviously we're doing something correct. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel. Now we'll turn to Amelia.
Hello, everyone. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Citizens for Global Solutions for inviting me to talk about the World Federalist Movement and the youth. Well, I would like to start talking about the youth, the young as key political actors. You know, there are 1.8 billion young people worldwide. That is the largest generation of young people the world has ever known. So they are part of a very challenging world, as we all know, a world that is facing a series of different crises. The COVID pandemic has shown young people, and of course, every citizen of the entire world, that there is a crisis of health, but also there is a crisis of education, a crisis of unemployment, a crisis of violence, a crisis for girls. I mean, all of them are urgent and all of them need to be addressed now. So young people are aware of this reality because they are part of it and they want to change, and that is the good point. So they do not want to be merely participants, they want to be change makers. And they have shown they have the power to do it. If we think, for example, in the March of Our Lives, or in the Arab Spring, or even in the movement led by Greta Thunberg, young people around the world are pushing social change forward. They want to be protagonists in the fight for their rights and their well-being. So we know that young people want to change the current status, but not all of them know how to go about it. So here is where we have an opportunity. I mean, the World Federalist Movement has it. By approaching young people, the WFM could be the platform, could be the collective actor that they need. I mean, if they are part of this huge movement, young people could feel empowered, could feel transformed. They could feel that they can contribute to society, no matter how small these changes are. So they can be part of a movement that share the same worries, but also the same values as them. When the World Federalist Movement was created some decades ago, the world was much more different than now. And so the WFM is forced to readapt to these new realities. So in this process of readaptation, the youth need to be included. So answering to your question, Bob, that is not an easy one. I think that the World Federalist Movement need to work in 3 specific strategies. And the 3 specific strategies are complementary to each other. First, the WFM should communicate better what it does through a more direct and simple message. I mean, concepts as like global governance or world federalism are very abstract for the young, especially for those that are not involved in politics. I mean, these concepts are so far away from the current situation that could be very difficult to understand. The second point is that the WFM should create campaigns or initiatives that specifically focus on the demands of the young people. It could be maybe more related to the preservation and care of the environment, or maybe to economic situation, because we know that unemployment is a very important issue for the young in today's world. And the last but not least, the WFM should build a network with those organizations made up of young people around the world. So all of them are connected. All of these strategies could be reached by the WFM there is an opportunity in the world that is because we have globalization and technology, and the world has become smaller, and we have unlimited possibilities of connection. So the WFM should grab this opportunity, take it, and create a powerful youth movement inside its organization.
Great, thank you so much, Emilia. And now we turn to Semi.
Hi everyone, I'm Sammy. So yeah, both of them, they made great points. So yeah, with everything that the world is going through, the significance of World Federalist Movement is increasing by the day, as we all know. And yeah, this makes it very essential to reach out to youth, and as it is the next generation, right? So how do we empower the youth to use their voices? So in my opinion, I think we can do that by first reaching out to places where the youth spends more of their time. The second would be including the youth in every decision-making process, and honoring their voices and understanding and implementing ideas, and creating platforms for the youth to speak and create awareness, and also by guiding the youth to believe that our voice matters, and inviting the youth to launch new projects and ideas. For example, the World Citizens Clubs, even though they have been highly impacted by COVID, they're very impactful and practical, because for example, I myself was introduced through the club. Since now though, however, COVID has changed basically everything, the way we interact, the way we live our day-to-day life. So it's more virtual now. People are more on their devices. So having, for example, Zoom events, online events where they could engage and see and learn about the World Federalist Movement is, I believe, would be the best way to reach out, and for the youth to get engaged and make their voices heard. So yeah, first is reaching out by targeting where the youth really spends more of their time on, which is usually social media and online, and creating events where they feel like they can relate to, because as both of them mentioned, the youth wants to make their voices heard. They always have a lot to say. We always have a lot to say. So yeah, creating that platform would be helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Semi. So at this time, I'd like to invite our 3 panelists to unmute themselves. Everyone else, please remain muted for this portion. We didn't rehearse this. We don't know how long it would go, but we wanted to leave some time for the 3 panelists if they had any responses to each other's ideas, if there's something more that they wanted to say about their own approach or anything of that sort. So we have a few minutes for that. So if any of the three panelists want to jump back in, the floor is open.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point to something Amelia said as well, is that
Yes.
reaching out to other youth organizations, I think there's a really good point to be made here in the fact that modern, I don't know what you call it, I guess, modern progressivism is almost a carbon copy of the ideology of world federalism, like in terms of the things that they stand for, the things that they want, the things they believe in. It's just that they're trying to make like a national version of it, but really it much more organically suits an international framework, which is all like sympathy for refugees and like, you know, thinking forward and managing things properly and climate change and everything. And I think if you could just get the message right, if you can make the right kind of content, get the right kind of people, you could effectively just flip the entire progressive movement into being world federalists. It's just getting the right leverage, but the meat is absolutely there. So I think it's a really good point about reaching out to the other youth groups.
Well, I totally agree with you, Daniel, and I think that the work that you are doing with young world federalists, I mean, it's really important because I think the communication is a key for the WFM. I mean, they should not be taken for granted. And when I'm talking about, for example, to create a clear message for the young, I mean, we are all the time talking about abstract concepts that they are very difficult to explain, and through videos like you do, I think that it is a way to approach to these young people that want to do change, to make change possible. And I'm sure that the WFM could collaborate a lot on that, and we have to, of course, to share all the activities that we are doing, for example, in Democracia Global or in the in Citizens for Global Solutions. We need to share all the information that we have and all the events and to reach young people to them, because they want to participate, I'm sure, but they don't know how sometimes.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like a lot of people, and we've noticed this, and this is sort of part of the reason why we tried to make everything online and very common for everyone everywhere, is you'll get a lot of people joining who have thought this sort of stuff and they live in some completely random country in some random part of the world, and they want to know how they can get involved. And if there's no organization there, there's no web presence, they sort of just go, oh, I guess I can't, and they leave again. So what we're trying to do is build something through the Discord and through the Reddit and the videos and everything else that we have, that it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, we had one really active guy who helped us set up, who was based in far northern Norway. So no chance he's going to get involved with anything, but he's the one who made us, like, physically, but he helped us set up all the Facebook stuff and everything else. And he's been off and on involved ever since. You know, we had a guy in Bulgaria who was in the middle of nowhere. Again, we are able to facilitate that because all of our communities exist completely online. So I think by really hammering on videos and, you know, that kind of stuff that grabs people quickly, because really, I mean, you learn this in sales, because so everyone who's curious, I'm a professional salesman, so it probably helps. But the thing is, part of this is you're selling results, right? No one really is that interested in how you get there to begin with. What you do is you go to someone and you sit down with them and you say, hey, look, would this outcome be of interest to you for these reasons? And if they say yes, then you've already got them on board to a degree. And you say, well, now you got to go through this pain in the ass process to get there, but you already like the endpoint, so you'll do it anyway. And that's kind of what we're asking people about, right? We're saying, we're selling world federalism as an endpoint, and then saying, well, they've got all these campaigns and stuff you can get in to get there. You know, they're only going to do it if they're bought into the end result. So what we try and do is make videos and stuff that's all like, what is world federalism and stuff. So answering those fundamental questions to get people excited about the endpoint, so they'll put the work in to, you know, do all the stuff in the meantime. And I think that's one of the things that's been missing from the movement, is focusing on that endpoint, because that's what makes people excited. No one is excited about UN reform. Like, it's boring as crap. It doesn't matter. The thing is, what they like is what that gives them if it gets reformed, right? That's the part that's exciting, is space exploration, everyone's cooperating, common technological development, all that sort of stuff. Like, that's sexy, that's awesome. The thing is, going through administrative bureaucracy is tedious at best. And so you got to make people excited enough to do it. And so that's what we've been trying to do. And that's what we're doing, a big campaign now, which obviously Donna and Bob know about. We're trying to plan out a big campaign that basically involves every single group of the World Federalist Movement to try and pull more people in the front door, because obviously that's where the things have been lacking. Like, got plenty of good ideas to how to get there that we just need people behind, but we just need to get more people in. Yeah, sorry, I ramble a lot. People tell me off all the time.
That's quite all right. Floor is still open for the three of you. We still have a few more minutes.
Yeah, that like Daniel made like a really great points, and he brought like the sales principles too. So I don't know that much, but from what I know, like 2 reasons why people don't like get into things is either they don't see value in it or they don't trust it, right? So I think it's the same way. So we have to show, like, just like you said, the end result, like the value, the big value, and also like make them like build trust, right? And earlier
Yeah.
you also mentioned that it's they're interested, like they want to be on board, but then they're like, oh my God, that's probably gonna take like a long time. That's impossible and stuff. And like they feel like they're like, oh, how is that gonna happen? But like when they find out that there are a lot of us that are working on this, and like there are a lot of people that, like, when they find out, then that can be very, very motivating. So yeah.
And that's actually the role that Discord plays really well, is that, like, you have people who feel like they're completely on their own on this, right? They don't know who to turn to, they don't know who to talk to. You give them a community, right? And you give them a place to go where they can go and make friends and form a social group around this concept. So it doesn't matter if you're doing anything right that second. It's just, it'll keep going and keep going and keep going on its own, because they're all friends. They want to talk to each other every day. And I think in that way, we've found a community that is able to persevere even when things are slowing down or getting hard or whatever, because they all just want to see each other every day. And fomenting that kind of thing makes it really sustainable. So yeah.
And of course, I think that those platforms like Discord are a space for the young to discuss problems that affect us all. There are common problems around the world, and that maybe one have solutions or cutting ideas, and there in the platform they can read, they can discuss, they can debate, and that is why they are so important. And also, I would like to say that sometimes if we think how to connect with a person, I don't know, in Australia or in some country of Africa or in Europe, I mean, we need to think about internet, because it's the only tool that we have, and it's a very powerful one. Because through, I mean, if the WFM has a very friendly website and appealing social media accounts, I'm sure that we are going to have more young in the movement, because there are a lot of people, and especially young, that are worried about the current situation and also are looking for solutions. And here we have the movement to bring them hope and the platform for action.
I mean, you guys got to realize how easy it is to find people if you look in the right places. Like, I mean, this is a generation like myself that grew up watching Star Trek and playing video games like Halo, and all of that is about unified humanity combating common problems. They've kind of been indoctrinated just like I was since a young age. And like, people who turn up, you say, oh, where did you first think about this? Oh, I spent my entire childhood playing the Halo games, and that's what it's all about. It's just, there's so much groundwork you don't realize has already been done. And then you just say, oh yeah, this thing is the same. It's very similar to what you're talking about. And they're like, holy crap, really? I want to get involved. Like, they're so excited to find something that's actually that thing that they fantasized about. And then, yeah, that is an easy 100,000 people. We just got to get the right message in the right places.
Exactly. That's the key.
Okay. Any other comments from the panelists before we transition to the larger group? Okay.
I'll add one more thing.
Please go ahead,
just quickly. I'll be quick. It's basically that through this process, we've actually found a guy named Martin Chabanda. And Martin Chabanda's, I'm probably butchering his name with my Australian accent, but the thing is, he's located in Gaborone in Botswana. And the thing is, he is all over it, and he is talking about setting up like a regional group to like promote this amongst the youth in Africa, because it's a huge demographic there, and we're already formulating the plans of how that's going to work. And I think that kind of stuff, you showed that on Facebook simultaneously with, so the co-founder Nick did a protest in front of the UN not that long ago. So you do that with the Africa thing all at once with like a common logo, common brand. It'll seem like there's this big sleeping Leviathan that no one knows about. And then everyone's going to want to go and Google it and find out what the hell it is. And that is perfect, because that's when you suck people into having a debate about it. And then when they're debating it, well, you're already massively winning on the point we're at now, because at the moment, no one talks about it. So yeah.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. With that, I'll say a word or two, and then we'll transition to the wider audience. In the meantime, if you want to put your hands up in the participants block, that would be a great thing. So first, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that if you locate Brandon, who is in one of the squares, right behind him, he's waving, right behind him is the logo for the Young World Federalist. So Brandon, if you, exactly. so just for people, I just couldn't pass up that opportunity. So that's their logo. And obviously Brandon is involved. So that's item one. Item two, I just want to underscore something that Daniel said. I initially heard it in slightly different words, but the point was that the way I heard it is, when you're selling, you always start with the benefit statement. That was the phrase I heard. So what is the benefit that they'll get out of it? Another way to look at it is it's a means and an ends issue, that I think in the World Federalist Movement, we sell the means a lot, a World Federation or this treaty or this institution. We don't talk about the ends, that peaceful, free, just, and sustainable world community.
That's
And
right.
that really, whoever is off mute, please go back on mute for a moment. So anyhow, so yes, so starting with the ends, as Covey said, as I mentioned yesterday, begin with the end in mind, and then you could talk about the means. And lastly, just to point out that Citizens for Global Solutions so far has hosted 2 events that are discussions for active leaders in the World Federalist Movement who are under 40 years old. And in part, this panel grew out of that. So we've been doing what we can to support those activities. So with that, I'll open the floor. I see a number of hands already in the participants box. So we'll start with Ann Zill.
I've very much enjoyed this conversation, what each of you have said and contributed to this convention. I've spent a large chunk of my life in the cause world, mostly in Washington, more recently in Maine. But what I know that I didn't hear precisely mentioned, although I think you all probably understand this, is that timing matters. And it's almost a cliche to say that, except that some of the big successes in my life, certainly, and in the larger world of starting the World Federalist Movement by students during the ending days of World War II and afterwards, was a timing matter. It was an excellent time to get rid of war and to work together in order to achieve a world without war. And so it had its biggest, earliest impact because of that. And I could give a number of other examples. I'm not going to take anybody's time at the moment, but my own personal experience is that
And I must cut in to say we have half a dozen people in the queue and less than 10 minutes left. Please either ask your question or make your point. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, I was just finishing my point, and
Great, thank you.
that is that with in my case, Watergate. I worked on Watergate. I worked on electing more women in the U.S. and a number of other issues, and And when they worked because people were ready for it. And so we need to look for the moment and seize it. It's a political instinct.
Great. Thank you, Anne. On to Jane. Please unmute yourself. And if everybody could be brief. Thank you.
So my experience, the way I entered was actually very similar to Daniel's. It was by way of space and science fiction and hearing what Daniel give a talk to the UCLA Astrobiology Society, tying that in to space, space, science fiction, and world government. I'm like, whoa. And here I am. So I think that's a big group that we should be pursuing. It's people who are into that. Second, I want to point out something that was interesting, which is the question of what is it? What do we call the means and what do we call the ends? Because Daniel was talking about a world federation is the end, and then all this stuff you gotta do to get there as the means. While Bob was talking about various practical benefits, which of course are very important, as ends and world federation as a means. And it almost becomes arbitrary because you have this chain of events, one leads to the next, But I want to pick up on what Daniel was saying in calling World Federation an end, because I think it kind of is one, in the sense that it would be a political embodiment of the idea that we are one human species, that a political embodiment of the idea of some sort of human unity. And in that sense, it's an end, while also being a means to all these other things.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. At this point, before I go to Tom Camarella, I want to publicly apologize to Anne. I was looking at the wrong clock when I came in and told you to please make it brief. We do have a little more time than I thought. Sorry about that. So let me turn to Tom Camarella, and if you would unmute, you're next.
What specific things, search engines, are people finding you, Daniel? And it also goes to the other two, because a lot of people call themselves Federalists, and some people think that's a religion. I have changed my way of saying it. I'm a Federation advocate, or an advocate for Federation. Would that help? I mean, do people think it's a religion?
No, I mean, so I don't know if I have time to answer properly.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Basically,
these are questions to you. Yes.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so basically, we get most of our people through Reddit. Reddit is an online community, and we've got 5,500 people in our community. So when people join, there's a lot of reminders telling them to join the Discord. In general, the word Federalist has been nothing but a good thing for us. I mean, no one seems to think it's anything other than what it is, really. It's basically just a lot of people who are in favor of world governance and things like that seem to be joining and saying, yep, this is what I thought it was, more or less, once that they're on there and we've talked, spoken to them a little bit. Yeah, basically, I've heard before in the US that it's kind of a bad word because it's a federal society. But the thing is, even with our American people joining, most of them don't seem to make that connection at all because, we're all aware of the federations in the world. So the US Federation, the German Federation, the Australian Federation, like it seems more or less like it's not really been poisoned, the term.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Turning now to Nancy Dunleavy. If you would unmute your line.
Hi, just quickly, first of all, it's nice to see Semawit. She's not on her video at the moment, but nice to see her. To the other two of you, I just wondered, how did you hear about the World Federalist Movement? Especially because, as you say, we haven't necessarily been marketing ourselves well. What was your foray into our group?
I feel like I've talked too much, so I'm going to let Amelia go first.
Okay. I started in Democracia Global as a volunteer, like I don't know how many years, like 5. And then I started working, and now I am the executive coordinator. And Democracia Global is part of, is the only associated organization member of the WFM in Latin America. So through Fernando that Bob mentioned, and Camila, that is the executive director and is here listening to us, I started asking, I started working in Democracia Global and knowing about the movement. That is how I connected it.
So mine was, I think it was back in 2014. I thought about getting serious about this. I'd thought about it through uni for ages on my own. I'd never heard of the WFM, and this is the case with most people in my situation that join us now. I went out and basically just Googled World Government Advocates, World Unification, whatever.
Wow.
And the WFM is the first thing that popped up. And obviously the website was basically dead. So the thing is, I didn't think anything was actually happening. So then I went off and made my own thing called the United Republic of Humankind that was completely reliant on me. And then I got tired and stopped because it was reliant on me. And then I stopped for a while, and then I came back with Nick and did the YWF. And obviously that has taken off far better than anything else I did before. But yeah, in terms of hearing about it, it was my own effort to go out and find out about it. And I think that's where all the crazy hyperactive people are who really want to do something. And then we're trying to get all the people who haven't quite gotten to the point of, I'm so impatient, I want to do things on my own, because obviously that's a teeny tiny sliver of people.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Okay, we have, just to let folks know where we stand, we have Roger, Soveda, Ron, and Simon in the queue. We've got about 8 minutes left, so if everybody can be brief. So Roger, take it away. You need to go off mute.
I would be curious as to young people's response. Is they want to get involved because they want to end wars or stop the nuclear arms race or climate change, or what seems to be the motivation, or human rights? Why do people even want to bother to join?
So an easy answer to that is no one really has a particular reason. Climate change is probably the only one that might be a reason for some people. I mean, it might be weird for you guys to think about this, but no one cares about nuclear weapons anymore. It's just not an issue. The thing is that we've all grown up with them here, and they're a part of our lives, and no one's ever blown each other up yet. So we don't think about them. It's not a priority. Whereas the general thing that gets people is this general thought of, we will get to a world federation. Again, this is selling outcomes, like to Jane's point. You will get to a world federation, and we won't have to deal with this nationalist bullcrap anymore that we have every single day in the news, because it's all just like nationalist this and nationalist that, and what's this country doing and what's that country doing, and who gives a shit anymore? I just want to go to space. The thing is, that's really what people think, and the thing is, that's what you're selling. You're selling this endpoint where nationalism and all the inefficiencies of human nature and everything else we've adopted from history doesn't have to hold us back anymore. That's what psychs people up, and that's why they're getting involved, because they believe in this endpoint, not really issues in particular. Although space is a huge one. A lot of huge nerds in there like myself.
Great.
Well, I think I agree with Daniel. It's not about, a specific issue. But I think that the COVID pandemic give young people the opportunity to think that we are connected, that we are all affected by a pandemic. We are all in the same situation, and we are all in the same. We are all part of the same world. So I think this is the opportunity and the timing for the WFM to take advantage of this opportunity and lead a change with the youth.
Yeah, just to also add on a little bit, like everybody wants to be a part of solving an issue that relates with them, right? So there are a lot of different issues, like it all depends on like wherever that person is. So yeah, it could be racism, ethnic based violence, and all that, like differences that are not really differences, you know? So yeah.
Great. Thank you all. We'll move on to Soveda.
Thanks. I just had one thought and one question. So the thought I had is that another way of articulating the end or the value is a vision. That's the message that we've been using in the Center of Peace and Global Governance, and has attracted young people, creating a vision of the kind of world we can have. So inspiring, that's what people are dying to be inspired. Once they're inspired, then they'll do whatever it takes to get to that inspiration. And that leads me to my question, and I'll direct it to Daniel because you mentioned this, so I'm looping here. You said it's easy to find young people, if you know where to look. And I know you mentioned Reddit, but so what are the right places to look? Yeah, that's it.
I mean, really, you got to put the right bait out there. So you got to put like the right kind of video or the right kind of image or something to get people to understand what you're talking about. So absolute number one rule that I have with almost everything that we do is don't use vague language, because there's a million NGOs that talk in vague language that doesn't mean anything. So if you use the words like global voices for humans, I don't know, whatever non-governmental terminology you want to use, it sounds like nothing, because there's a million NGOs that have killed that method for everyone else because they use it in grandiose terms. So the thing is, you got to say things like global democracy, World Federation, whatever it is, because the people who do think this stuff already see that and say, holy crap, that's what I've been thinking. What is this thing? And they click, 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 and they go down the YouTube rabbit hole, so to speak, and find out everything about it in one day. So YouTube's fantastic. Absolutely get a functioning YouTube channel, because that is a great rabbit hole. It's great to think of these things as rabbit holes, basically, in terms of things people can just fall into and spend all day on. Then Facebook's great. Reddit's fantastic for communities. You just have to get some momentum and things going, but there's a lot of good places. Anywhere online, you can't really go wrong. It's just that you got to get the right messaging to get the right kind of people. And it's about, are you targeting people who already think this, or are you targeting people who are undecided? And I think the easy wins first, and then you'll have X number of people and you can target everyone else.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to Ron Glossip. Unmute your phone, and then we'll go.
I only want to say that it seems to me that the beginning point has got to be talking about the United Nations and why it is not effective at dealing with global problems like global warming, like the pandemic. I think that's the problem. You start out with why the United Nations is not succeeding, and then what needs to be done to make the United Nations into an effective organization.
Yeah, I mean, criticizing the UN is actually a pretty good way to go often, because the thing is, everyone's pretty bored with everything they do because they don't seem to do anything. I know they do stuff, but like in terms of the way public people perceive them, it seems like nothing's happening, and that's who you're targeting. So the thing is, you have to kind of honor that feeling and say, yeah, you're right, nothing really is happening. We need to do these things to fix it. The key, though, is not to get too bogged down in talking purely about the UN and its internal processes, because, again, it's not exciting. What you need to do is talk to people about the outcome and then say, the UN should be doing these things. Like, this is the fantastic reality we could have. The UN should do it, but it's not. Why isn't it doing it? So it's sort of like a pathway of still starting with the end result, because a lot of people don't even know about that, and then coming back. But I agree with you. Getting at the UN is a good way to, hook people.
Great. Great, thank you. We have one more person in the queue and about another minute to go. So let's see if we can do this. Simon, if you would unmute yourself, and you're next and last.
Apparently in selling, there's another secret. It's not what benefit you get as the first thing and how that benefit will make you beneficial, apparently the thing missing, which is filled by successful sellers like Apple and the Reverend Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, is believing first in in believing why you are doing this. Why, and then how, and then what the benefit. So why has to come first, apparently, if you want to be really effective, really influential, really successful in showing participants the benefits they will get by joining. It excites them because it's the subconscious mind that is stimulated when you start with your why, which usually translates into like, I have a dream, or I believe why this will benefit you. Why, then how, then what? Apparently, these are some of the new codes that have been decoded.
Great. Thank you, Simon. We're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank our panelists, Daniel, Emilia, and Semi, for joining us and sharing their wisdom and responding to the questions. We have 5 minutes. We'll have a 5-minute break now, and then we'll go on to the awards.